Room 347 needs vitals check. The charge nurse's voice barely registered as Maya Torres stared at the patient assignment board, her hands trembling. Vincent Marconi. The name hit her like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. It couldn't be him, not here, not under her care. Maya had spent 3 years in nursing school trying to forget that name, trying to bury the memories of what Vincent Marconi had done to her family. Now, on her second week as a registered nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital in Brooklyn, fate had placed him in her hands, unconscious, vulnerable, hooked to machines that kept him alive after a botched assassination attempt. The irony wasn't lost on her. She walked down the sterile corridor, her new sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floor. If you're watching this, please subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're from. We love hearing from our viewers around the world. Maya steadied her breathing as she approached room 347, her nurse's badge feeling heavier than it should. Through the small window, she could see him, the man who had destroyed everything. Vincent Marconi lay motionless, his once imposing frame reduced to a collection of tubes and monitors. A ventilator breathed for him, an IV dripped medication into his veins. The bullet had entered through his temple, the surgeon had explained during handoff, leaving him in a vegetative state. Brain activity minimal, chances of recovery nearly zero. Maya entered the room, her professional training taking over even as her mind reeled. She checked his vitals mechanically, blood pressure stable, heart rate steady, oxygen saturation good. Her hands worked while her thoughts spiraled back 8 years to the night everything changed. She had been 17, studying for her chemistry final, when the FBI agents knocked on their door in Queens. Her father, Marco Torres, had been arrested for money laundering. The charges were fabricated, her mother insisted, planted evidence. But the prosecution had a witness, Vincent Marconi, a low-level enforcer for the Gambino family who claimed he'd seen Marco handling dirty money for the organization. It was a lie. Marco Torres was a legitimate accountant who had refused to cook the books for Marconi's crew. The testimony was revenge, a setup orchestrated by Vincent himself. But the jury believed him. Her father got 15 years in a federal prison upstate. The sentence destroyed them slowly, like poison. Her mother, Elena, worked 3 jobs trying to keep their apartment, trying to pay for lawyers who promised appeals that never materialized. The stress broke her down until the cancer found her weakened body easy prey. She died when Maya was 20, 4 years after Marco went to prison. Her father, crushed by grief and guilt, even though he'd done nothing wrong, hanged himself in his cell 6 months later. Maya hadn't even gotten to say goodbye. She stood over Vincent Marconi now, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, mechanically driven by the machine. One switch, one disconnected tube. It would be so easy. Who would question a rookie nurse's mistake? Equipment failures happened. Alarms were missed. Her hand moved toward the ventilator controls, then stopped. The rational part of her brain, the part that had fought so hard to get here, to build something from the ruins of her life, screamed at her. This wasn't who she was. This wasn't why she'd become a nurse. But the other part, the part that still woke up crying, that still reached for a phone to call parents who would never answer, that part whispered differently. "Maya?" A voice at the door made her jump. Dr. Reeves, the attending physician, stepped inside with a tablet. "Everything okay?" "Yes, doctor." She forced her voice steady, stepping back from the bed. "Vitals are stable, no changes." Dr. Reeves nodded, reviewing the chart. "His family's been calling. They want an update. The daughter especially, Sophia Marconi. She's coming by this evening." Daughter. The word landed like another blow. Vincent Marconi had a daughter who loved him, who was worried about him, who probably didn't know what kind of monster her father really was. Just like Maya had once loved her own father, Dr. Reeves left, and Maya completed her assessment, documenting everything with shaking hands. As she turned to leave, she caught her reflection in the darkened window. A 25-year-old woman in navy scrubs, dark circles under her eyes, carrying the weight of ghosts. The question that would haunt her for weeks formed in that moment. What do you do when the person who destroyed your life is completely at your mercy? Maya's shift stretched into the evening, each hour pulling her back to room 347 like gravity. She tried focusing on other patients, the elderly woman in 352 recovering from hip surgery, the teenager in 349 with appendicitis, but her mind kept circling back to Vincent Marconi and the impossible situation she'd found herself in. At 7 p.m., Sophia Marconi arrived. Maya saw her first in the waiting area, a woman in her early 30s wearing an expensive black coat, her dark hair pulled back, eyes red from crying. She spoke with the charge nurse, her voice breaking as she asked about her father's condition. Maya watched from behind the nurse's station, hidden by a computer monitor, studying the daughter of the man she'd learned to hate. Sophia looked nothing like a mobster's daughter. She looked like someone drowning in grief, grasping for any hope. She looked, Maya realized with uncomfortable clarity, exactly how Maya herself must have looked 8 years ago in that courthouse, watching her father be led away in handcuffs. "Nurse Torres," the charge nurse called out, "can you bring Ms. Marconi to her father's room?" Maya's stomach dropped. She wanted to refuse, to claim another patient needed her, but professionalism demanded otherwise. She nodded, approaching Sophia with careful neutrality. "Ms. Marconi? I'll take you to see your father." Sophia's eyes met hers, desperate and searching. "How is he? Please, I need to know the truth. The doctors keep saying the same things, but I need someone to tell me honestly." They walked down the corridor together, and Maya chose her words carefully. "He's stable. The machines are doing most of the work right now. His brain activity is minimal. But he could wake up, right?" Sophia's voice carried a fragile hope. "I've read about people in comas who wake up after months, even years." Maya paused outside room 347. "Anything is possible, but you should prepare yourself. The injury was severe." Sophia nodded, steeling herself, then entered the room. Maya stayed by the door, watching as the daughter approached her father's bed. Sophia took Vincent's hand gently, tears streaming down her face. "Papa, it's me. I'm here." Her voice cracked. "You have to fight. You have to come back. I can't lose you too." And too. The word hung in the air, and Maya found herself wondering who else Sophia had lost. Despite everything, despite the hatred Maya had carried for 8 years, something uncomfortable twisted in her chest watching this scene. Sophia stayed for an hour, talking to her unconscious father, telling him about her day, about her young son who missed his grandfather. She played music from her phone, old Italian songs that filled the sterile room with unexpected warmth. When she finally left, her eyes were swollen, but she managed a small smile for Maya. "Thank you for taking care of him. I know it's just your job, but thank you." Maya nodded, unable to speak. After Sophia left, she returned to room 347 to check on Vincent one more time before her shift ended. The Italian music still echoed in her mind, and she found herself looking at him differently, not just as the monster who destroyed her family, but as a father who had a daughter who loved him desperately. Her phone buzzed, a text from her roommate Jenna. "How's your shift? Still coming to Marco's memorial dinner tomorrow?" Marco, her father. Tomorrow would have been his 55th birthday. 8 years gone, but the pain felt fresh as an open wound. Maya looked at Vincent Marconi's motionless form and felt the complexity of her situation crystallize. This man had taken everything from her: her father, her mother, her childhood, her sense of security. He'd built his lies so convincingly that a jury of 12 people had believed him over the truth. But he also had a daughter who loved him, a grandson who would grow up asking about him, a family that would be shattered by his death, just as Maya's had been shattered by his lies. "I don't know what to do," she whispered to the unconscious man. "I don't know how to forgive you. I don't know if I even want to." The machines beeped their steady rhythm, indifferent to her crisis. Maya finished her charting and left the hospital as the night shift took over, but she carried room 347 with her, a weight that had nothing to do with medical equipment and everything to do with justice, revenge, and the impossibly thin line between them. Maya barely slept that night. Her small studio apartment in Bushwick felt claustrophobic, the walls closing in as she tossed and turned, replaying the day's events. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw two images overlaid. Her father in his prison jumpsuit during their last visit, his eyes hollow with defeat, and Vincent Marconi lying helpless in that hospital bed, kept alive by machines. At dawn, she gave up on sleep and went for a run through the Brooklyn streets, trying to outpace her thoughts. The early morning air was sharp and cold, her breath forming clouds as her feet pounded the pavement. She ran until her lungs burned, until physical exhaustion threatened to overwhelm the emotional turmoil, but it didn't help. The questions followed her like shadows. By afternoon, she found herself at the small Italian restaurant in Astoria, where Jenna had organized the memorial dinner for her father. A group of Marco's old friends had gathered, people who'd never stopped believing in his innocence, who'd attended Elena's funeral, who'd helped Maya with tuition when money got tight. "To Marco Torres," old Mr. Chen raised his glass, his eyes misty. He'd worked with her father at the accounting firm. An honest man who paid the price for honesty. "To Marco," the others echoed, and Maya felt the familiar ache in her chest intensify. After dinner, Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd been her mother's closest friend, pulled Maya aside. "Your mother would be so proud of you, Mija. A nurse, helping people. That's beautiful." "I don't feel beautiful right now," Maya admitted quietly. "I feel lost." "Why, honey? What happened?" Maya hesitated, then found herself telling Mrs. Rodriguez everything. About Vincent Marconi, about room 347, about the impossible weight of being responsible for keeping alive the man who'd destroyed her family. The older woman listened without interruption, her weathered hand holding Maya's tightly. When Maya finished, Mrs. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. "You know what your father told me once, right after the trial? He said the hardest thing about prison wasn't being locked up. It was knowing that hatred had won, that Vincent Marconi's hate had been stronger than the truth." "What am I supposed to do with that?" Maya's voice broke. "Just forgive him? Pretend what he did doesn't matter?" "No, Mija. You're supposed to choose who you want to be. Your father never wanted you to carry his pain. He wanted you to be free of it." But freedom felt impossible. That night, Maya returned to St. Catherine's for her shift, her mind no clearer than before. She deliberately avoided room 347 for the first 2 hours, focusing on her other patients with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. But eventually, inevitably, she had to do the hourly check. Vincent Marconi looked exactly the same, unchanged, unreachable, existing in some twilight space between life and death. Maya performed her duties mechanically, checking vitals, adjusting his position to prevent bed sores, ensuring the equipment functioned properly. As she worked, she found herself talking to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't even know I'm here, do you? You don't know that the daughter of the man you destroyed is the one keeping you alive." She checked the IV line. "Sophia came by earlier. She brought your grandson. He's 3 years old. She held him up to see you, told him Grandpa was sleeping." Maya paused, her hands stilling on the bed rail. He looks just like you, actually. Same dark eyes, same stubborn chin. He kept asking when you'd wake up to play with him. The machines beeped steadily, a rhythm that had become familiar. Maya found herself continuing, words flowing out that she'd never planned to say. My father never got to meet his grandchildren. I'm 25 and single, but I always thought maybe someday. Maybe I'd have kids and bring them to visit him, and he'd tell them stories about growing up in Ecuador, about coming to America with nothing and building something real. Her voice hardened. You took that. You took everything. She finished the vital check and started to leave, but something made her stop at the door. She turned back to look at him. This man who had loomed so large in her nightmares, now reduced to a collection of biological functions sustained by technology. I could let you die, she said quietly. I could make it look like an accident. But then I'd become you, wouldn't I? I'd become someone who destroys families, someone who puts their own pain above everything else. The realization settled over her like a cold rain. Mrs. Rodriguez was right. Her father was right. Keeping Vincent Marconi alive wasn't about forgiveness or justice or even mercy. It was about refusing to let his hatred define her. It was about choosing deliberately and consciously to be different from the man who destroyed her family. Maya left room 347 with something approaching clarity, though the pain hadn't diminished. She couldn't forgive Vincent Marconi. Maybe she never would. But she could choose not to become him. The following week brought an unexpected complication. Maya was updating Vincent's chart when Dr. Reeves approached her with a troubled expression. We need to talk about Mr. Marconi's case. His daughter has been researching experimental treatments. She's found a neurologist in Boston who specializes in coma patients, particularly those with traumatic brain injuries. Dr. Harrison wants to review the case. Maya's hand tightened on her pen. What does that mean? It means if Dr. Harrison thinks there's potential for recovery, we might be transferring Mr. Marconi to his facility in Boston. It's cutting-edge work, stem cell therapy, combined with targeted electrical stimulation. Dr. Reeves studied her carefully. You seem invested in this case. Is there something I should know? No, Maya lied quickly. I just want what's best for the patient. But as Dr. Reeves walked away, Maya felt panic rising in her chest. Boston. If Vincent recovered, if he woke up, he'd go back to his life, back to the Gambino family, back to destroying people like her father. The thought made her sick. That evening, Sophia Marconi arrived earlier than usual, bringing a thick folder of research papers. She was animated in a way Maya hadn't seen before, her eyes bright with hope. Nurse Torres, have they told you? Dr. Harrison in Boston thinks my father might be a candidate for his program. It's experimental, but there have been cases, people who were given no chance and they woke up. Sophia grabbed Maya's hands, her enthusiasm genuine and heartbreaking. This could work. He could come back. Maya forced a smile, her mind racing. That's wonderful news. I know it's a long shot, but I have to try. I have to do everything possible. Sophia's eyes filled with tears again. You probably think I'm crazy, holding on to hope like this. No, Maya said softly. You're being a good daughter. You're fighting for your father. The words felt like shards of glass in her throat, but they were true. Sophia was doing exactly what Maya would have done, what Maya had desperately wanted to do 8 years ago, when her own father was taken from her. The parallel was too painful to ignore. After Sophia left, Maya found herself in the hospital chapel, a small, quiet room she'd never entered during her time at St. Catherine's. She wasn't religious, hadn't prayed since her mother died, but she needed somewhere to think, somewhere the beeping monitors and fluorescent lights couldn't reach her. She sat in a pew, staring at the simple cross on the wall, and let herself ask the question she'd been avoiding. What did she actually want? Did she want Vincent Marconi to die? 6 months ago, if someone had asked her, the answer would have been an immediate yes. But now, having seen Sophia's grief, having witnessed the human cost of his absence, the answer had become complicated. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. "Saw you were working late again. You okay?" Maya typed back, "Not sure. Dealing with something complicated. Want to talk about it? Not yet, still figuring it out." She pocketed her phone and closed her eyes, trying to imagine what her father would say if he were here. Marco Torres had been a gentleman, slow to anger, quick to forgive. He'd taught her to see the humanity in everyone, even those who hurt you, but he'd also taught her to stand up for what was right, to fight injustice wherever she found it. What was right in this situation? What was just? Maya didn't have answers, but she knew one thing with certainty. Whatever happened with Vincent Marconi, she couldn't let it destroy her the way his lies had destroyed her parents. She couldn't let this become another tragedy that defined her life. As she left the chapel, her phone rang. It was the charge nurse. "Maya, we need you back on the floor. Mr. Marconi's having complications, blood pressure dropping, heart rate irregular. Dr. Reeves is on his way." Maya's heart seized. She ran back to room 347, her professional training kicking in even as her personal feelings churned beneath the surface. When she arrived, the scene was controlled chaos. Nurses adjusting medications, respiratory therapy, checking the ventilator, monitors alarming. Dr. Reeves arrived and began barking orders. "Increase the vasopressor. Get me a blood gas. Page cardiology." Maya worked alongside the team, her hands steady despite the emotional storm inside her. This was Vincent Marconi's life hanging in the balance, and regardless of what he'd done, regardless of her personal feelings, she was a nurse. She'd taken an oath. They stabilized him after 20 minutes of intensive intervention. As the crisis passed and the other staff filtered out, Maya found herself alone with him again. This unconscious man who'd caused so much pain. His heart rate had normalized, his blood pressure had recovered. He would live, at least for now. "I saved you," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I saved the man who killed my father. I don't know if that makes me strong or stupid." But as she left room 347 that night, something had shifted inside her. She'd been tested in the most profound way possible, and she'd chosen life over death, compassion over revenge, professionalism over personal pain. It didn't erase what Vincent Marconi had done. It didn't bring her parents back, but it meant she could look at herself in the mirror and recognize the woman staring back, someone who honored her father's memory by being better than the man who'd destroyed him. Dr. Harrison arrived from Boston 3 days later, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and an impressive resume. Maya watched from the nurse's station as he examined Vincent Marconi, reviewing scans with Dr. Reeves, discussing treatment protocols. Sophia stood nearby, her hands clasped together as if in prayer, hanging on every word. After the examination, Dr. Harrison spoke with Sophia in the family conference room. Maya wasn't privy to the conversation, but she saw Sophia emerge an hour later, her expression a mixture of hope and determination. The daughter found Maya at the medication cart. "Dr. Harrison says my father is a candidate for the program. We're transferring him to Boston next week." Sophia's voice trembled with emotion. "I know the odds are still long, but there's a chance, an actual chance." "I'm happy for you," Maya said, and meant it, despite the complicated tangle of feelings beneath the words. "You've been so good to him, to us. I wanted you to know that." Sophia reached into her purse and pulled out a card. "This is my personal number. When he wakes up, if he wakes up, I'd like you to know. You've been part of his journey." Maya took the card, her fingers numb. She wanted to tell Sophia everything, about Marco Torres, about the lies, about who she really was. But what purpose would it serve? It would only transfer her pain to this woman who was fighting so hard to save her father. "Thank you," Maya managed. "I hope the treatment works." Over the next few days, as preparations were made for the transfer, Maya found herself spending more time in room 347 than necessary. She told herself it was professional diligence, ensuring Vincent was stable enough for transport, but the truth was more complex. She was saying goodbye, not to Vincent Marconi, the man, but to this chapter of her life, to the weight she'd carried for 8 years. On Vincent's last night at St. Catherine's, Maya performed her final assessment. She checked his vitals, adjusted his position, ensured all his medications were properly documented for the Boston team. As she worked, she found herself talking to him one last time. "I thought having you at my mercy would feel powerful. I thought maybe it would give me closure or justice or something that would make the pain less." She recorded his blood pressure. "But all it did was show me that revenge is just another form of prison. My father spent his last years in one. I'm not going to spend mine there too." She finished her charting and stood at his bedside for a long moment, looking at this man who'd loomed so large in her nightmares. In the harsh hospital lighting, with all the tubes and monitors, he looked smaller somehow, less monster, more human. It didn't excuse what he'd done. It didn't make his lies any less destructive. But it made him real in a way Maya hadn't allowed herself to see before. "I hope you wake up," she said finally. "I hope you wake up and face what you've done. I hope you have to look Sophia in the eye and know that you've lived a life built on destroying people like my father. That's better justice than anything I could do to you here." The transport team arrived early the next morning. Maya watched from the nurses' station as they loaded Vincent onto a specialized ambulance, Sophia following close behind with her son clutching her hand. The little boy waved at the nurses, and Maya waved back, her heart heavy. Dr. Reeves came to stand beside her. "You did excellent work with that patient, Maya. I know some cases affect us more than others. Are you okay?" "I will be," Maya said, and for the first time in 8 years, she believed it. That evening, Maya returned to her apartment and pulled out a box she kept under her bed, photographs and letters from her parents. She looked at pictures of her father smiling, of her mother dancing at a family wedding, of the 3 of them together before everything fell apart. The pain was still there, would always be there. But something else had been added. Peace. She picked up her phone and called Mrs. "Rodriguez, Mija, is everything okay? I need to tell you something about the last 2 weeks, about Vincent Marconi." Maya talked for over an hour, pouring out everything that had happened, every decision she'd made, every moment of doubt and clarity. Mrs. Rodriguez listened without judgment, her presence a comfort even through the phone. When Maya finished, the older woman was quiet for a moment. "Your father would be so proud of you. Not because you saved that man's life, but because you saved your own soul." Those words stayed with Maya as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment. She thought about justice and revenge, about forgiveness and hate, about the choices that define us and the ones that destroy us. She thought about her father, who died in a prison cell for a crime he didn't commit, and her mother, who'd worked herself to death, trying to fix an unfixable situation. And she thought about herself, Maya Torres, 25 years old, a rookie nurse who'd been tested in ways she never expected and had emerged on the other side still herself, still whole, still capable of choosing compassion over cruelty. 3 months passed. Maya settled into her role at St. Catherine's, growing more confident with each shift. She took care of cardiac patients and surgical recoveries, pneumonia cases and broken bones. She learned to navigate hospital politics, to advocate for her patients, to trust her clinical judgment. The other nurses became friends. The doctors began asking for her specifically. She was good at this work, and it filled something in her that had been empty for too long. She didn't forget about Vincent Marconi, but she didn't dwell on him either. He'd become a chapter in her story rather than the entire book, which felt like progress. Then on a cold January morning, her phone rang with an unfamiliar Boston number. "Hello? Maya? It's Sophia. Sophia Marconi." The voice was breathless, excited, disbelieving. "He woke up. My father woke up." Maya's hand tightened on the phone. "What?" 3 days ago. It started with just a finger moving, then his eyes opened. He's confused and weak, but he's awake. He's talking. Dr. Harrison says it's nothing short of miraculous. Sophia was crying now, happy tears audible through the phone. "I wanted you to know. You took care of him when no one thought he'd survive. You're part of this miracle." Maya sat down heavily on her couch, her mind reeling. Vincent Marconi was awake, conscious, able to speak and think and remember. All the things she'd hoped for and dreaded in equal measure had come to pass. "That's wonderful news, Sophia. I'm so happy for you and your family." They talked for a few more minutes before Sophia had to go. Doctors were coming to run more tests. After hanging up, Maya sat in silence, processing this new reality. Vincent Marconi was alive and conscious, and somewhere in Boston he was beginning to remember his life, including the lies he'd told that destroyed the Torres family. Over the next few weeks, Sophia sent occasional updates via text. Vincent was undergoing physical therapy. His speech was improving. He was asking about what happened, trying to piece together the months he'd lost. The messages were cheerful, grateful, a daughter's joy at having her father return to her. Maya responded politely to each one, maintaining the professional distance she'd established. But privately, she wrestled with new questions. Did Vincent remember testifying against her father? Did he ever feel remorse? Would he, confronted with his own mortality and given a second chance at life, choose to be different? She'd probably never know the answers, and she was learning to accept that. Then, in late February, Sophia sent a different kind of message. "My father wants to thank the nurses who saved his life. We're coming to New York next month. Can we take you to dinner?" Maya stared at the text for a long time. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to maintain the separation she'd worked so hard to create. But another part of her, the part that had chosen life over death, compassion over revenge, was curious. What would it be like to sit across from Vincent Marconi, this man who'd haunted her for 8 years, knowing what she knew? She typed back, "That's kind of you. Let me check my schedule." The dinner was arranged for a Saturday evening at a quiet Italian restaurant in Manhattan, neutral territory. Maya changed clothes 3 times before settling on a simple black dress, professional but not severe. She arrived early and sat at the bar, nursing a glass of wine and trying to calm her nerves. When Sophia arrived with Vincent, Maya almost didn't recognize him. The man from room 347 had been unconscious, intubated, stripped of personality. This version walked slowly with a cane, his movements careful but deliberate. His hair was thinner, his face more lined, but his eyes were sharp and aware. "Nurse Torres," Sophia greeted her warmly, embracing her before introducing her father. "Papa, this is Maya. She took care of you at St. Catherine's." Vincent extended his hand, his grip weak but sincere. "Thank you. Sophia tells me you were there during some difficult moments." His voice was raspy, damaged from months of intubation, but the accent was pure Brooklyn, the same accent that had echoed through that courtroom 8 years ago, speaking lies that sounded like truth. They sat down to dinner, and the conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Sophia did most of the talking, filling the silences with stories about Vincent's recovery, about her son, about their family. Vincent added comments occasionally, his speech slower than it must have been before, but his mind clearly sharp. As the main course arrived, Vincent turned his attention fully to Maya. Sophia says you're an excellent nurse. Natural talent for the work. I try my best, Maya said carefully. What made you choose nursing? The question hung in the air, and Maya felt the weight of truth pressing against her carefully maintained composure. She could lie, could give some generic answer about wanting to help people, or she could tell him exactly why she'd chosen this path, because watching her parents die had taught her that caring for others was the only way to make meaning from meaningless loss. Personal experience, she said finally. I lost both my parents young. It taught me the value of compassionate care. Something flickered in Vincent's eyes, recognition maybe, or understanding. I'm sorry. That's a heavy burden for someone so young. We all carry burdens, Maya replied, meeting his gaze directly. Some heavier than others. The dinner continued, and Maya found herself studying Vincent, looking for signs of the man who'd destroyed her family. She saw an aging mobster trying to make peace with his mortality. She saw a father who loved his daughter. She saw someone who'd been given an improbable second chance at life, but she didn't see remorse. She didn't see recognition of the pain he'd caused. Maybe he'd compartmentalized it, told himself his own lies so many times he believed them. Maybe he simply didn't remember Marco Torres among all the other people he'd hurt. Or maybe, and this possibility was hardest to accept, he remembered perfectly well and simply didn't care. As dessert was served, Sophia excused herself to take a phone call, leaving Maya and Vincent alone at the table. The silence stretched between them, loaded with everything unsaid. You've been very kind to my daughter, Vincent said finally. She needed that, needed people to care. She's a good person, Maya said honestly. She is. Better than me, than I ever was. He looked down at his hands, scarred and age-spotted. Being that close to death, being trapped in your own body. It makes you think about things, about choices you made, people you hurt. Maya's heart began to race. Was this it? Was this the moment of acknowledgement she'd been waiting for? But Vincent's next words went in a different direction. I spent my whole life in the life, you know, the family business. Thought I was being loyal, being strong. But lying in that bed, unable to move or speak, all I could think about was everything I'd missed. My grandson's first birthday, Sophia's graduate degree. Real life, happening while I was too busy playing gangster. He looked up at Maya, his eyes tired. I know I can't make up for lost time. I know there are things I did. He trailed off, seemingly unable or unwilling to continue that thought. When Sophia returned, the moment passed. They finished dessert, exchanged pleasant goodbyes, and Sophia promised to stay in touch. As Maya walked home through the cold February night, she felt oddly empty. She'd hoped for something, confrontation, recognition, remorse, closure, but what she'd gotten was much more human and much less satisfying. Vincent Marconi was just a man, flawed and damaged, trying to make sense of an improbable survival. He wasn't the monster from her nightmares, but he also wasn't redeemed. He existed somewhere in between, in that complicated grey space where most people live their lives. And Maya realized that perhaps that was the final lesson in all of this. People are complex, justice is incomplete, and closure is something you give yourself, not something others provide. That night, Maya opened her laptop and began typing, a letter she would never send, addressed to her father. Dear Papa, I met the man who ruined our family today. He's old now, damaged, given a second chance at life that you never got. He doesn't remember you, or if he does, he couldn't bring himself to acknowledge it. I thought I'd feel rage or vindication or something powerful. Instead, I just felt sad. Sad for you, for Mom, for all the years we lost. Sad for Sophia, who doesn't know what kind of man her father really is. Sad for all of us, trapped in this cycle of pain and lies and incomplete justice. But here's what I want you to know. I'm okay. I'm not defined by what he did to us anymore. I chose to keep him alive when I could have let him die, and that choice freed something in me. It proved that your daughter could be better than the man who destroyed you. I'm a nurse now, Papa. I help people. I save lives. I make a difference. You'd be proud of the person I've become, even through all the pain, maybe especially because of the pain. I miss you every day. I miss Mom every day. But I'm not drowning anymore. I'm swimming, and I'm going to be okay. Your daughter, Maya, she saved the letter, closed her laptop, and looked out her window at the Brooklyn skyline. Somewhere out there, Vincent Marconi was probably sleeping in a hotel room, grateful to be alive, unaware of the mercy he'd been shown by the daughter of a man he'd destroyed. Somewhere out there, countless other families were being torn apart by lies and violence and injustice. And somewhere out there, Maya Torres would wake up tomorrow and go back to St. Catherine's Hospital, where she would continue saving lives, including those of people who might not deserve it. That was justice, she realized. Not revenge or punishment, but choosing every day to be better than the worst things done to you. Choosing to heal rather than hurt. Choosing to live fully rather than be defined by loss. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined 8 years ago, sitting in that courtroom. But it was the ending she needed.